Hello and welcome to the Super Rugby season review. review. Oh dear, brought to you by DrivingMaul. Hi, I'm Paul, the guy behind DrivingMaul, your best place for rugby opinion and predictions. So we're going to, first let me introduce my good friend, Shane. How are you doing, sir?
Good, thanks, Paul. How are you?
Not bad, not bad. You kind of nipped in at the last second there. So we've had no chance to do any pre-show prep or agree what we're going to do. So I'll enlighten you and the viewers at the same time as to how the show is going to go. Basically, what we are going to do is we're going to go through each of the teams, say how we think they've done from a what's the word I'm looking for here? I've gone blank. From an expectation, so we'll grade them A, B, C, or D, a bit like you do at school, except. Well, a bit like at school, you know, if you're in one of the lower classes, you can get an A for being not so quite so good. So if the expectations were bad for a team and they lived up to those or exceeded those expectations, then hey, they get a better grade. So this isn't just like kind of I came first, therefore I got an A. No. The Sunwolves probably are going to get higher. They're not going to get a D because they performed better than that. Whereas other teams like the Bulls, who came last in their division, they won't be getting upgraded because of their performance. So that's what we're going to do. We'll also have a very quick look at who's leaving and how much that, or joining for next season, and how much that might impact as well. So Shane, I've not even let you say hello yet, have I? Hello, sir.
Yeah, how are you, mate? It's a nice evening here in northern New South Wales. So I'm happy to say without the jumper tonight.
Wow, you see, I have lots of layers on. It's still cold here, and it's raining as well. So yeah, it's pretty miserable here down in New Plymouth. We haven't seen Mount Taranaki much recently. We did see him at the beginning of the week, which was nice. But I say he's been missing quite a bit recently. And for those of you who go, hey, Mother Nature and all that kind of stuff, the reason I say him is because he is it's a he in Maori mythology, and the fact that he basically walked away from all the other volcanoes and came out here. Quite how volcanoes walk around, I don't know, but we do have a volcano observatory here, and I tell you, for me, mountains stay in one place, so you don't need to observe them. They're not going anywhere. Why are you watching it? Anyway, that's just me. Tangents, aren't they a great thing? So Shane, You've told me already that actually you can't stay too long. Don't worry, I've got Ashwin joining later. But so what we'll do is we'll go to the Australian conference first, because hey, that's where you're from. So the Sunwolves, how do you think they did this year?
I've got to say it's the most a much improved effort. Obviously, and forgive me, Blues fans, and I know you're a Blues fan, and Ashwin is as well, but they started that improvement on the final round last year when they knocked off the Auckland-based side. I know that you've said that they were on holiday, and I was probably on holiday with them. I've got to...
You got to go to Fiji with the Blues team? Fantastic, well done. You should have been reporting from there.
I wish I was. But I've got to say, though, Paul, they played an exciting brand of rugby this year, wasn't it? It was just great. They stayed in every game to the potential that they did have. You know, I think for the first 70 minutes against the Hurricanes, they really had a good go. So, I mean... obviously, they knocked off the Reds, which wasn't a great day then. We squared up the ledger in the final round, but I've got to say they play an exciting brand of rugby. I'm looking forward to seeing them play next year. And for me, I'd give them a B.
You give them a B. So, hi, we've got quite Mr. Graham, Christian, Jack, Andre, Unbiased Rugby, all in the chat there. So thank you for joining us. And yeah, someone's being I think Jack was being a bit harsh when he says Sunwolves were bad again. And let's be honest, look, they got a win at home against the Reds. They got a win in Hong Kong against the Stormers. They got a win against the Bulls in Singapore as well. So they got some good wins in this one, and they ended their season with those 3 wins, 13 losses. To be fair, minus 260 points against. But as you say, they played an exciting brand of rugby. They definitely scored a few points as well. Actually, I should probably try and find that and bring that up. But so yeah, and I do think we've seen with Jamie Joseph and Brown, they've got a couple of very good coaches there. I personally was a little bit concerned because I thought they were taking on too much, trying to be national coach and Super Rugby coach at the same time. They won't be able to concentrate on it enough. But hey, my pre-season thoughts on that obviously have been proven wrong. And yeah, I think they had a good season. My only piece that I'm sort of a bit upset about is how they rested their players prior to the June window when they came down, and I think it was played 3 games in Australia. And so to me that was a little bit of a shame. And they scored 404 points, as you say, which is more points than the Brumbies or the Reds, who actually picks up more wins. And they've scored more points than the Blues and also the Stormers as well. So, yeah, you say exciting rugby. Defence obviously still an Achilles heel of theirs, as they did give up the most points out of anybody in the competition, and that's really what, which is what hurt them. Jack, you might be being honest. That's fine. I still think it's a little harsh to give them to say they were bad again. I think they definitely have improved and shown how they can improve going forwards, which is the big thing here. So yeah, I think I agree with you. With a B, is perhaps the most appropriate.
And Paul, if I could say so as well, the game that they beat the Bulls in was probably one of the best games of the year. I could not believe how fast that game was and their line speed in defence, particularly in the dying minutes when they were holding on to that lead. So stick with Jamie Joseph. He's a very good coach. They're certainly not championship material, probably not even quite finals material for the next couple of seasons, but they'll get stuck in and they'll play some good rugby.
Yeah, exactly. Let's not make them sound better than they are. I mean, they are still one of the weakest teams in the competition, but that doesn't mean they haven't shown improvement on last season and aren't going the right way. At the moment, it's not clear. I don't know which players are staying and leaving, but you've got to say too, Hayden Parker is going to be key. It's going to be key that he stays there because he's been very much a key player for them this season. And
do you feel some of the New Zealand sides might eye him off for a potential 10 in the future?
So if we quickly run through the New Zealand sides and the 10s they've got. So the Blues, if we start north to south, I've got Perifetta and Terry Black, who obviously has been injured this whole season. So they have a clear 1-2 there, both young, upcoming fly halves. Go down to the Chiefs, and you've got D-Mac. So he's clearly going to be number 1. I mean, would Hayden Parker move from number 1 in Sunwolves to be a number 2? I don't know. So he's a very different style of play. You'd be changing your style entirely there. So I can't see him go to the Chiefs. Down at the Hurricanes, you've got Bowden Barrett as the clear number 1 there, and he's not going to get unseated, is he? There is questions, I guess, around who their number 2 is going to be next season, because West is leaving to go to France next year, which I just think leaves. I don't want to butcher it, so I'm just going to quickly zoom up and check who they've got for next season. They've got James Marshall coming back from London Irish to go with Garden Bashop there, so there's not really any room there. Richard Moanga at the Crusaders, clearly, with Hunt behind him. They're in a good place. And you've just got Higher West heading down to the Highlanders. So the only place you could go back to potentially is back to the Highlanders, where Bryn Gatland has moved to. But they've also had Fletcher Smith and Josh Ione coming through there. So I'm not sure there's much space for him, particularly in any place he could go to is back to the Highlanders, where he was before, I think.
is certainly going to be a key moving on for the Sunwolves if they're going to win a couple more games next year. He's a good player. He's good to watch.
Yep, he's a good player, good to watch. What we saw though was that this isn't just a team around their internationals like him. Obviously, we had Little in the centres, Michael Little, and a couple of other players, but Willie Britz, for example. I mean, Willie Britz didn't play that many games. He was definitely replaced by the Japanese players, and I think what we saw with their poor performances in Australia was that this isn't a team that relies entirely on its internationals, on its foreign players. It relies a lot on his on the Japanese players. So that's a good sign for the Brave Blossoms going forward as well. So I'm kind of positive there. So there's no news yet as to who might be leaving or staying from the Sunwolves, so we can't really talk much on that note. Next up, a team that you're close to, looking at your jersey and also knowing you. The Queensland Reds played 16, won 6, lost 10. As I say, scored 389 points, so less than the Sunwolves, but led in 501. Sorry, led in 501, which was 160 points less than the Sunwolves, so much better defensively. Also picked for a try bonus point, which actually the Sunwolves, for all their attacking flair, didn't do this season, which is a bit of a surprise to finish on 28 points. Thoughts on the on how the Reds went in their first season under Brad Thorne?
Well, there was the early season, the first game of the year, where we had the red card, Scott Higginbottom, and I was, here we go again. And, the Rebels certainly cleaned us up that night. And then we had the 3 wins in a row, including, I think, the best defensive, and I'm not being biased here by saying so, it's the best defensive effort I've seen in a long time from a rugby side in that win in Argentina, keeping them to 7. And we only scored 18 ourselves, but and the second half defence against the Bulls in Brisbane, and the Brumbies, we had an 8-point win there as well. We had the 3 on the row. Then we had some struggles in the middle.
Yeah, after that 3 on the row, we saw a lot of us talking about their forward pack, their sort of grittiness, their tenacity. But that then kind of fell away, as you say. They had a bit of a down patch after that, didn't they?
They did. And then on Family Day, which I believe the 3 o'clock kickoff, bring them back, we played the Lions, which those boys are going to be playing in a final in only a few days' time, and last year's minor premiers. And in the first half, our forwards were all over them, and we stuck away with the win. The Lions came back in the second half, but it was one of the gutsiest Queensland performances I've certainly seen. We've developed some good forwards. You know, we had a couple of wins there at the end with another bad patch, including that the loss against the Sunwolves. Could we have won probably 1 or 2 extra? Well, that's to be debated. 6 wins is still good, in my opinion. We have a funny scoring system in Australia. They're going to get a 5.5 out of 10 or a C+.
Yeah, okay, very good. I was going to say 5.5. We're doing A, B, C, D here, and you can't go 5.5 out of A, B, C, D. C+ for you. Andre makes a good point that it is a young side and have introduced 8 new players this season, and there has been a real culture change, hasn't there? I mean, we've seen Quade Cooper, not Phipps, I'm on blank now, as to the scrum half that was
Frisbee.
We've also seen Carmichael Hunt,
James Slipper,
also out there, and yeah, James Slipper's a bit of a strange one because I don't see where he seems to be not the negative influence that the other ones kind of have more of a reputation for. He doesn't have that kind of reputation, so it's a bit of a surprise to see him in that one. But yeah, he definitely was a young transformation season. And I guess we perhaps we got some of us got ahead of ourselves with those 3 wins on the trot and thought they should perhaps do a little bit better. You've got to remember though, this is Brad Thorne's first season as a head coach. He's only ever done a head coach position before at NRC level, which is a different kettle of fish entirely. So I think he's done a decent job there. So maybe a B-. I'll go a bit higher than a C+ in the end on that one. Were there games they should have won? They didn't, absolutely, but that's part of a young side coming through in a transitional one, in a transitional season.
Can I just point out too, Paul, that players like Payanga Ramosa, Isaac Rodder. Isaac Rodder actually started all 3 tests against Ireland at lock, and that shows you how far those boys, and Payanga Ramosa started as well. It shows you how far these boys have come under Brad Thorne through the NRC, now up to Super Rugby and Wallabies levels. And we've got some more young fellas coming through. Caleb Timu's doing pretty well. Tupou, the Tongan Thor, he was just ripping in and skittling everybody in his path, even a few Kiwis in the game against the Hurricanes and the Highlanders didn't. They met the wrath of his scorn. But to be honest, we also cleaned out players like Rob Simmons, who made a fresh start for himself, as we'll talk about later. And they were very hard choices, but they had to be made. And this is the Thorne era is well and truly kicked off in Queensland.
Now it has, absolutely, and the Simmons is perhaps the only one there that you kind of think that may have been. But when you've got Kane Douglas, Isaac Rodder, Lucana Tui, you've got enough depth in that second row position that actually Simmons would have been wasted there. And from an Australian rugby point of view, they want him somewhere else getting more rugby. So it's actually, I don't see that one as being as being negative about him in the same way as it was about the other players, because there is that depth there. You've got 3 other Wallaby capped players in that position already. Should one franchise have 4 Wallaby capped players in the second row in one team? No, that you need to spread your talent around more than that. So I think that one, I think give him a bit more than a bit more than that. Looking towards next season though, Kane Douglas off to Bordeaux, George Smith off to Bristol, John Lance to Worcester, Ben Lucas to Grenoble, and Eto Nabuli to Bordeaux. Some significant players leaving there in that one, in sort of, particularly in Kane Douglas and Eto Nabuli, I think.
Well, Nabuli is a very good winger for his worth. He's certainly not the standard of George Bridge, but he's certainly a very good, solid worker around when given the opportunity. George Smith, well, he's an enigma to Australian rugby. I've got to say I'm very appreciative of what he did, and John O'Lance this year. They certainly had some calm heads and helped us with our 6 wins. But and George Smith was instrumental in actually teaching the new breed coming through of Queensland back rowers. So look, a few losses there, but who knows? Israel Folau is certainly on the radar of Queensland recruiting, and that could be a huge game changer for the Australian Conference next year.
It would be a big difference, wouldn't it? On there, Christian asks, what is Quade Cooper doing next season? Haven't got a clue, to be honest with you. It's still up in the air. One place he won't be is playing for the Reds. That's absolutely certain. There have been rumours about him going to, I think it was the Highlanders, actually, of all places, which would be an interesting place for him to go. And they are a place that's used to taking players that aren't wanted elsewhere. So from that point of view, perhaps an interesting choice. But yeah, and I've not heard of any other rumours recently as to Quade, as to what Quade might be up to.
I don't think his 2017 season last year was all as bad as it was made out to be. In terms of his effort, it was slightly above the average. But at the end of the day, hard decisions have got to be made. And where's the next generation coming from? And players like Moses Sorovi, Tate McDermott, and I think will be a very confident 10 in Australian rugby in the future, Hamish Stewart. And Hamish Stewart is the first choice 10 next year at Queensland. I've got to say, as a Reds fan, I'm delighted. I think he will thrive under the environment. Give him a year or two to really develop his game with the likes of Sorovi and Tate McDermott, live wire nines. We've got to realise that if we don't give these young blokes a go now, where are they going to go? There's only 3 other sides in Australia now. There's not the Western Force. They're in a different competition. So otherwise, it'll be overseas. And if I could mention too, Campbell Magnay, who's only 21, playing in Japan, I think is coming back, I think, next year as well. He's one to look out for as well. So, Exciting times ahead.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I personally still think that Quade Cooper can do a job for a Super Rugby side. I just think clearly that the Reds aren't the place for him currently. The Rebels, mind you, that could be a different ballgame. But anyway, so you've gone C+, I've gone B- for them. Let's moving on then. The Brumbies, 16 wins. 16 wins? That would be a fantastic season. Oh dear. 16 games, 7 wins, 9 losses. Again, scored less points than the Sunwolves going forwards, but also led in a lot less points at 422, meaning they had a negative 29 points difference. And one of the things to point out here, I guess, is that there was only one team from the Australian Conference with a positive point difference, and only one team from the South African Conference with a positive points difference as well. So, minus 29, not a bad effort on that score. To finish on 34 points, only behind the Melbourne Rebels on bonus points. How do you think their season went under their new coach?
Well, it's ironic that they won less games last year and won the Australian Conference and made the finals. They've won one more game this year because they've obviously played one more game this year. Last year was a 15-game format. This year is a 16. They brought it together in the end, perhaps too late, but and they certainly made up that minus 29 deficit quite a bit with a few late wins, didn't they? The couple of wins against the Sunwolves, they got that win against the Tars. I think I said on our preview show a few weeks ago, there's nothing more that the Brumbies love than beating the Waratahs, because there's a big history there that dates back 25 years. So what you see is what you get with the Brumbies. They're tough as nails. They'll give it a go for the 80. Pocock and Spate, I thought, were sensational this year. They got through a lot of work on the park. Joe Powell's forever improving in the 9 jumper, and playing for the Wallabies the last couple of seasons has helped as well. Tom Banks as a fullback, wow. you might have to move Folau to 13 and Banks to 15 for Bledisloe 1, the way that Banks finished off the season. They've got some big locks. They're a good all-round side. They could have done a lot better. They'll have to, no doubt they'll regroup, and I reckon they'll be back in 2019 to give it a real shake.
Yeah, a couple of interesting ones. So Jack's gone B-, whereas Christian's gone D. So some.
I'm going B.
You're going for B for them. I might go for a C+. On them, I think. I thought they would be the side that would be challenging the Tars, and they never really were in that sort of position. As you say, they finished with a wet sail, but the beginning of their season just was too poor on there. And Biased Rugby C++. I mean, how nuanced are we going to get with these grades? I'm not sure. I think some serious questions. It took them a long time to settle down as to who their 10 was going to be and how they were going to lead themselves around the park. And I think that was a bit of a problem there. I felt the coach Dan McKellar didn't really know what his best side was for the first half of the season, and eventually he got there, as you say. Looking forward to next season. A few players on their way. So Richie Arnold off to Japan, as is Fakilosia Lee, and Nazarani, only just joined from the Force, is off to the Rebels next season, and then Carl Goodwin off to Europe as well. A couple of other players, but I don't think they didn't feature much. On the inbound, though, Peter Samu from the Crusaders. Any particular worries you think there from the sort of personnel leaving?
Nazarani's a workhorse and a very solid player. Obviously, he's being looked at very closely by the national selectors for the 8 position next year. So he's off to the money team and the Rebels. And good luck to him there. He was solid without being brilliant this year. Peter Samu. Now, breakdown teams beware. You now have Samu, who has been trained in New Zealand with the Crusaders, and David Pocock, who is a 3-star general at the breakdown. So be careful where you run next year, because those blokes will be at you, and they'll be tackling, and they'll be getting down, and they'll be looking for the penalty. So you better be releasing the ball. Peter Samu's a talent, and he's got a lot of time left. So, I'm other than that, the Brumbies have an Air Australian backline as well. So I'm looking forward to seeing them.
Yeah, I guess my concern is again, what's that 10-12 axis going to be next season? Because they settled on Leofanu and Godwin towards the end of the season, and Godwin's off to Ireland. So yeah, how are they going to sort that out next season? Is to me is the big question mark. I think Samu coming in replacing Nazarani is fine, and losing Richie Arnold is losing a bit of depth, but I think they can survive without him.
One thing about the Brumbies, and I've known it for a long, long time, they know how to churn out a player from somewhere that will fit into a position. I'll just say the 3 words that I know very well with them. They'll be right.
Yeah, I say, and I think they will be right, all apart from that 10-12, which was what their Achilles heel was at the beginning of this season as well, I think. So yes. Second in the table, the Rebels. 7 wins, 9 losses, same record as the Brumbies. Minus 21 on the old points difference. Scored a lot more points, 440, but let in a few more as well. Finished on 36 points, so 2 points ahead of the Brumbies, with a couple of extra try-bonus points. And I guess stark contrast to the Brumbies, it was the beginning of the season that really won it, that was really the strength for the Rebels, wasn't it?
Yeah, got off to a flying start. got the bat out, started to hit the balls towards the boundary, so to speak, if we can use the cricket analogy. They were flying, with all their new signings, and it was almost like, for all you basketball fans, the Golden State side coming out to play, or the Harlem Globetrotters. You could almost see them always spinning the ball on their hands and ready to get out there. They were considered the team that was virtually the Western Force second side, first side. Sorry, no insult to the Western Force, but came out flying. 3 bonus point wins on the trot. They played very well against the Sharks. They had some struggles early against the New Zealand sides. Put it together in Auckland. Nearly got the job done in the end to get into the finals. But 4 opportunities they blew. They were up by 16 against the Hawaris with 30 minutes left. The Hawaris mowed that down. They blew their opportunities against the Waratahs. They blew their opportunity against the Highlanders. So really, if you had about those 3 wins, they would have finished on top of the conference and won it and made the finals. So they played some very good rugby this year, but there's also they had the potential to do a little bit more.
Yeah, for a side that was kind of 2 sides cobbled together with a coach coming in, I think they did very well. I wasn't expecting this from them, especially at the beginning of the season. Obviously, they tailed off. I think what that really showed was their over-reliance on Will Genia and just a lack of depth there. Also, they struggled trying to figure out. Not having Will Genia and then not having a proper 10 really was their big problem. So it just showed that they were over reliant on one player, who is a very good player. Don't get me wrong.
And I believe the heavy press speculation is that Matt Tamua is coming back to Australian rugby and to the Melbourne Rebels next year. So he'll be joining Izzy Nazarani down there. I'm excited by that, and that might be a proper 9 and 10 if you have Genia and Tamua, which allows Hodge to go back to the centres. Murphy's going to be a big loss, obviously he's probably in a little bit more trouble than that, according to media reports, but which we won't go into, but he had a brilliant season at 8. He was always churning up the metres. So Izzy Nazarani's pretty solid replacement, I think. But the keep up the excitement, boys. I'll give them a C.
You'll go for C, maybe a B minus, then perhaps that's probably a bit better then, because they did fade pretty drastically. Unbiased Rugby's gone B minus as well. Jack's gone B plus. They definitely, as Andres says, they punched above their weight early on. They did. Looking at the players leaving, obviously Maffey off to Japan, you've already mentioned, and Tamani off to La Rochelle, along with Kobe Faianga.
Quite a distance apart for those two.
Quite a good idea that's a distance apart for those two as well, yes, as you say. And Kobe Faianga off to Connacht. So 3 members of that back row disappearing. Nazarani has got a job on his hands to fill that gap. But if you're right, Matt Tamua is coming back. I think it's confirmed he's coming back to Australia. The only question mark is where. If he does land here, then you've got to say that actually that would be a step up for them, for the Rebels. Apart from that, by the looks of things, they're keeping all the regular starters together. There's a couple of other players who didn't start much who are disappearing, but on the whole, they're looking like they keep things together. So definitely room for, or potential for them to grow next season, having sorted out any squad issues. Obviously, the cliques didn't happen, and done very well there as well. Jack says they did early on because they played terrible teams. Now, I'm not going to go as far as play terrible teams. I will say that yes, the schedule favoured them at the beginning of the season, which helped them get off to a good start. But you can only play the players that turn up, and so so from that you can't blame the Rebels for that. It's the schedule they've got, and they did what they had to do. They came away with 5 points from each of those. So by coming away with a try bonus points, you've got to say, yeah, it doesn't matter who you're up against. If you as long as you put them away by 5 points, then that's then you've done the business. So finally, top of the table, the Waratahs. I think a lot of us said that's where they should end up. 557 points, so more than 100 points better than any other side in the Australia Conference. 445, the second best defensively. The Brumbies let in a few less, but a points difference of 112 positive, which is very good, and 44 points on the ladder. 9 wins, 1 draw, 6 losses for Daryl Gibson's side, the only side with the same coach from the previous season. How do you rate their season, having sort of dropped off to the Lions at the last hurdle?
Well, I think the Waratahs know their song. We are the champions, my friend. Well, they've won they won the Australian Conference, which is no mean feat. The Waratahs have always believed that they should be on top. That's just probably a cheeky dig here from this Queensland fan. But you got to say, the Stars came out to play this year, and I think you'll recall I said when we previewed the Australian Conference show before the start of the season, I said that the Waratahs had to come out with a new attitude, because traditionally they always play round 1 at home, and their first game at home has always it's traditionally been a derby game. This year the big test was the big South African Stormers side, and they snuck out a win. And I said to myself that night, something is about to at least we're going to see an improved side. Rob Simmons has rejuvenated his career. Kurtley Beale has been very welcome. He's been very dangerous towards the end of the season, which is what the Wallabies want to see at Rugby Championship side. Folau's always there. Naiavoro equalled the Australian try-scoring record. They were fast. They were dangerous. They played some shockers against as well. They blew a 29-point lead, which I've never heard of, not even in rural rugby where I watch every Saturday afternoon. And they blew the game against the Blues too, so they could have won a couple more there. But that being said, they proved themselves as Australia's best side at the death end of the season. They came back and beat the Rebels. They had probably an easier win than expected against the Sunwolves due to a red card, and they had a blimp against the Brumbies. They came back from the fire against the Highlanders. Some would say luckily, but that's a step for improvement. They'll want to make the final next year.
Absolutely, and it looks like Daryl Gibson has gone and saved his job, because a lot of us thought he was a bit of a dead man walking coming into this season. But as you say, he turned it around. I think some questionable coaching decisions at times didn't perhaps use. We saw, for example, we against they turned the game around against Rebels by kicking high, basically to Israel Folau on that right wing. And then we didn't really see much of it again through the rest of the season, doing that tactic. I mean, we saw some high kicking, but not to that extent where that basically won them the game, that turned it round. There were definitely games where Naiavoro wasn't given the ball out wide and with some space, it just couldn't work that for him. and there were a couple of games where they decided, oh, what, he's doing so well out wide, we'll bring him inside, and it didn't work. So definitely some coaching issues still there. But yes, they've got the superstars. They stepped up, and Curtly Beale is their key man, definitely.
Like, they get for winning the conference and for getting into the semi-finals, they get an A-.
Yeah, I can go with that one, definitely. And if we look, and there's a couple of Andre's comments, pretty I like in the chat there. Waratahs are very decent and the best Aussie team over the season. Their pack is still learning the ropes. Absolutely, the pack is definitely where we've seen a bit of a problem. And Riley Butler on Facebook, hey, thanks for joining us. And he makes a good point there. I think it's that we see that they are a bit of a bit lightweight in the pack at times. And he says, yeah, Waratahs need to get over the advantage line more, or they won't be better next year. Foley and Beale are just passers of the ball all game. Yes, they do. That's a little bit harsh.
Yeah, that's quite harsh, actually.
Beale can be can run sideways a bit, but when you've got players like Folau running very direct off that can work really well. I think Beale, I say had a very good season.
Now this is, I want to stress, Paul.
Yep.
Next year is also, if the speculation's right and he's coming back to wear a red jumper again, there is going to be that little issue there at fullback. But if he stays on,
so Andrew Kellaway and Naravoro are both heading to Northampton Saints. So that's Naravoro, as you say, top equaling the try scoring record. If they lose Folau as well, that's an awful lot of tries they're losing in that. And also your friend Paddy Ryan has retired as well. So a bit of depth and a lot of experience there heading out the door.
And as a proud Tamworth bloke that I am, and Paddy is as well, thanks, mate, for your service to Australian rugby. He's someone I've known for 20-odd years, and he's a good bloke, and whatever you do in the future, I dare say he'll be sticking around for the NRC, so he'll want to have a big end of season with the Country Eagles. So good luck, mate, and all the best for what you do in rugby. Come play for Pirates Rugby next year.
Yeah, for someone who's taken a lot of flack, he's had a very good Super Rugby career. Congratulations to him, and good luck in the future. But I say, Naravoro leaving is going to leave a big hole on the wing. If Folau goes, it's a big hole at fullback that the Tars will need to fill. You're looking at sort of 20 to 30 tries walking out the door with those two.
Sign the paperwork, Israel. Sign the paperwork, brother.
So we'll have to see how they go. They go next season. But I say, I think we both agree on the A- for that one. So thank you very much for joining me to go through the Australian conference. I know you have.
I'm quite happy to stay, mate.
You want to stay on for a little bit more? Okay, let me just throw a log on the fire, and then we'll move on over to the South Africa conference. Right then, so over in the Africa Conference, and again, what we'll do is we will run from bottom to top there. And in last place in the Africa Conference were the Bulls. 6 wins, 10 losses for them, finishing on 29 points, the same number as the Stormers ahead of them, but letting in 502 points meant they end up with minus 61 points on there, so they end up finishing below the Stormers. Last place, the Bulls, a team that have been champions. I mean, this is not where we expect to see them.
Yeah, the decline of the Bulls at times has been very disheartening, and they started so well. They beat the Hurricanes. a top 4 side, a side that 2 years ago won the lot.
But it wasn't just that beat them; it was the style they beat them with as well.
Oh, absolutely, and nothing more exciting than seeing the Bulls play. And I think they could have easily had 8 wins. They could have beaten the Sunwolves, and they could have easily, played better in their derbies against the Lions. It all looks so. Minus 61 is still not too bad for someone that's finished last on the table there. But yeah, look, I think John Mitchell probably wanted to get a side together this year, and I don't mind John Mitchell. I know he gets a lot of criticism, but he's coached the All Blacks. He's coached a lot of sides and built them up. And next year, maybe his last year, who knows? But if he can then glue that side that he's had this year and keep developing them, well, hopefully that they can, move a little further up the South African Conference. But it's a work in progress with the Bulls, I think. What do you think, Paul? I'll give them a C.
You're going to go for a C, are you? Wow, that's going to be better than most people in the chat. Where Jack's gone D, Christian's gone D minus. Andre has said their worst season for years, and yes, I've got to agree that I'm off for it. I'm going to give them a D plus on this one. That we and the D plus, I guess, is we saw some lovely play against with that forward offloading style against the Hurricanes, but we saw it disappeared for too many gaps in that season, and that was a real problem for them, for me. And so yes, hence I'll give them a D plus. But yeah, they just again too inconsistent. They couldn't play outside of South Africa. Something that became a key thing in South Africa was between them, the Stormers, and the Sharks was basically they could play at home but couldn't play away from home. All three of them, and that was a big problem for this for this side. And they haven't lost that many players. I mean, they're going to lose Pierre Schumann and Andre Strauss in the front row, and then Sean Anderdorf from on the flanks, and also then Francis Bruma in the centres. But I say not particularly. They're not getting devastated or that many big. Obviously, Andre Strauss is a big name, and yet we have as Andre reminds us in the chat. That Mitchell has gone and asked the Bulls board for 90 million rand or $9 million to buy players, and he gave them a big list of players that he wanted to buy. Now, to me, that's not the answer for this one. He came in, he removed some old players in a similar way that Brad Thorne did at the Reds, and this was supposed to be sort of the whole idea was to grow this team up from those players, and then at the end of the season to turn around and say, "Hey, I want $9 million." I think sends the wrong kind of image as to where he's going with this, especially as that's now been out in the press. So if you're a player now that's there, you're going to kind of like, well, he doesn't. My coach doesn't feel like I'm up to this. I don't like what's happened there with that one. I think it's a bit so it's a bit of a problem. I can see there being a bit of a problem at the Bulls next season.
Yeah, and I think John Mitchell is the eccentric character that we know and love, isn't he? Yeah,
well, we know. I'm not sure about the loving bit, but yes, that's.
We love the eccentric character part anyway, but look. I think it was mentioned, and rightfully so. If you look down the resume, he doesn't stay too long at sides, does he? And I think that he'll probably want to. I reckon it'll probably be his last year, and I have no idea how the press runs in South Africa. So don't give me any tips. But if he can leave a side for somebody with equally the high profile that he has to come along and grow that side further, it just it remains to be seen.
Yeah, I can't see him being there for very long. He does tend to upset people, and especially I think it was kind of like back me or sack me kind of thing. And now I don't think they've sacked him or asked him to leave. But yeah, to go in and ask that kind of cash is just crazy. We know South African rugby doesn't have that kind of cash, so it's all a bit silly. Moving on to the Stormers, finished on the same points as the Bulls. 6 wins, again 10 losses. Minus 33 on that, 390 points. So the lowest scoring team in the conference, but at 423, the second best defensive record, which is what kept them ahead of the Bulls. Again, another side that couldn't travel. How did you think of their season went?
Well, by their standards, I'd be very disappointed. This has been a top 2 side in South Africa for many years, and a very proud province at that. They played their best rugby sorry again, Paul. They played their best rugby against the Blues. I don't mean that in a narcissistic way or anything like that. It was certainly.
Whoa, hang on. Sorry, just something I didn't realise here. Andre's just mentioned in the chat. Mitchell was my director of rugby, a tough customer at the best of times. Well, that's a story I'm going to have to get out of him at some point. But anyway, sorry. Yeah, go on.
That was, in my opinion, their best game for the year, and where they showed their strengths. I'm looking forward to seeing how they go next year, because they got us in Brisbane, and they've got us in Brisbane, and and we played pretty well against them when they come over here, and I'm just a little disappointed with how they went. They could have done a lot better. They certainly got the side for it, the mobile backs, the quick backs, the mobile forward pack, but I'd be probably more disappointed with the Stormers than the Bulls, and that's a big call.
Wow.
C minus.
C minus. You see, so I think I'm going C plus because this was a team that I said at the beginning of the season didn't have the 9-10 combination, and we're going to be in real trouble. Obviously, losing Dupria off to the Sharks. And I looked at their 9-10s, and it was their very inexperienced axis there, which to me suggested they were going to have some real problems. And then Damon Willemse had a very good first season. Did he make mistakes? Yeah, of course he did. But he's a young guy getting his first shot at this level. And I thought he had a very good season for that. So perhaps whilst they probably end up exactly where I thought they were going to end up. So to me, I think it's C plus. Pretty much what I was kind of expecting, but actually some of their players performed a bit better. Losing to the Sunwolves in Hong Kong was really poor.
To me, that's unacceptable.
And their inability to win away from home all season was shocking. But in someone like Williams, I think they've got a player who can really they can really sort of build around. Looking forward to next season. They're losing Raymond Rule to France. The Nazim Khan off to Wasps in the UK are the two that kind of jump out at me. Janzi van Rensburg, the prop is going to France. De Klerk off to the lock, off to Japan as well, and De Venge off to Italy. But yeah, so losing a couple of names there, but let's say in Williams C, I think they've got someone there who can actually sort of build around for next season. It'll be interesting to see how they go.
And what a way to redeem yourself, because I'm just looking at the next year's draw for round one here, Paul.
Oh, no.
They got the Bulls.
The Bulls,
first
wow.
up. So the bottom two sides of the South African Conference are going to get stuck in to see who gets the first start, gets the head start for the year. So I'm now intrigued. I'm now really intrigued.
And Andre mentions that the Stormers came into this tournament as the Currie Cup champions. He says they'll be disappointed that something's not right in Cape Town. Yeah, I guess that it shows that, but that they're kind of out of the Super Rugby sides without their internationals, which is what basically the Currie Cup is, without the Springboks, they won it. But I think, I say, I think it showed that they were lacking in Springboks in this one. So, to me, so I'm not that. And when you got players like Evan Etzbeth who didn't actually play all season, so have you captain out that kind of length of time, and a player of his stature is always going to be a loss as well. So above them came the Sharks. 7 wins, 1 draw, 8 losses, 36 points, only -5 on the points difference. So pretty much scored as many as they let in. 6 bonus points, which is a pretty good account of themselves. Where are you going to go with this one?
Well, you have to look at the Sharks by breaking down how they went against their own conference, against the New Zealand conference, against the Australian conference. One thing I've noticed, Paul, when the Sharks play the New Zealand sides, they actually switch on and they make a game of it. They won 3 out of their 5 games against New Zealand, if you consider the loss that they had against the Crusaders in the finals. But 3 out of...
You've got to also remember that when they played the Chiefs had to send their All Blacks back to New Zealand for the training camp. So it was definitely a weakened... It was not a full-strength Chiefs side by any stretch of the imagination that they played at home.
No, and I can accept that. But I make the point that any win that you have, as we Australians know, against the New Zealand side is a bonus and something to really party about into the night. But they came so close to getting 2 on the road in New Zealand. It was a lack of ill discipline at the end that saw the Hurricanes over the line. The win in Auckland, well, they still conceded 40. They themselves scored 60. The Australian conference, they only had they beat the Sunwolves and they drew with the Waratahs, and they got a bonus point loss against the Brumbies, thanks to some big kicking by Harawa from halfway. They were brave against the Rebels, I thought, but the Rebels' backs just blew them away on that night. And in their own conference, they didn't do probably as well as they should have. They just got into the finals by beating the Juarez at home with virtually the last game of the season. So I'm going to give them a C. They could have showed potential, but could have done better, a little bit better.
Yeah,
but,
you got C pluses in the chat. Mr. Graham's actually on B minus. Now, for me, I'm going for a C, if not a C minus, in this one, because the Sharks are one of the teams that I'm most disappointed in all of Super Rugby, because not fine. You can say, look, but why, Paul? They clearly got ahead of the Stormers and the Bulls. They did, but I looked at their squad, I saw who they had, and I went, these are the guys that are going to challenge the Lions. And this was a Lions side that we've all said, with losing 7 games, losing to the Bulls, only beating the Sunwolves by 2. This is a Lions side that has not been as strong this season as they have from other years, and I really think the Sharks should have been challenging them for the top of the table, and they were a long way off. The 10 points behind, and never in contact. It was a late surge that sort of got them back up into the finals. So that's why I'll go for probably that C minus, is because I'm just so disappointed. I know they can do so much better, but as Andre said, there's some game management and coaching issues at the Sharks, and again they've got this travel issue. They just don't like being away from mummy at home, which is just really which is something I just don't get about these South African sides.
Not forgetting, Paul, that there are 4 times runners-up in this competition over the 22 years. They're no mugs. They've certainly had a lot of success in this competition in the past. I'm looking forward. They're one of the 3 sides I'm looking forward to watching next year.
Yeah, and again, I'm going to go into next year thinking these guys can really challenge the Lions to the top of the table. Or fight with the Lions and the Jaguars at the top of the table, because when I look at who they've lost, they've got Ross Glendhays however you say it. Sorry, say his name has been released. Franco Marias is off to Gloucester, but hey, he's not exactly he's been behind Vandermeer and Chili Boy. Keegan Daniel in the flankers has retired. Michael Claessens has also retired. He didn't even play this season. Garth April's off to Japan again. He's been behind Cohen Bosch and Robert Dupria. So you look at that and go, they're not losing anybody of any note in that side. This is a team. So to me, yeah, the Sharks again will go into next season on my books as being up for winning this conference.
And Paul, I hope they do. I hope they do next year. And I enjoy watching them play. I think when they're on top, they're on top. They're relentless, as you and I know, and particularly their forward pack and the stuff they can do with their backs. It's blistering to watch when they're on top. When they're down, though, it's not so nice to watch. But yeah, as I said, I am excited about 2019. I hope they do all right, and good luck to them too.
Yep. And then moving on to the next team, then the Jaguars, 9 wins, 7 losses, puts them on 38 points, and only with -9 on the old points difference. But if we have a look at just to kind of tell you how good that kind of record is, 9 wins, that's the same number of wins as the Lions got. That's the same number of wins as the Tars got. Admittedly, the Tars got a draw in there as well. But what really let them down was only 2 bonus points all season, which is basically puts them bottom of the pile along with the Sunwolves. No one else got less than 2 bonus points. Even the Mighty Blues got 6 bonus points in this competition. So, how do you rank their? And those 2 bonus points were both losing bonus points. They were both try bonus points. No losing bonus points. So, how do you rate the Jaguars season?
Well, that run through the middle towards the last few weeks of the season was just what the competition needed, Paul, because we needed to see what they're made of. This is the 3rd year that they're in this competition. They've had no real success at the Rugby Championship. Yes, they did beat us 4 years ago, which hurt. But the test of a medal to start that 4-game winning streak in Australia and New Zealand, they came from 16 points down to beat the Rebels. And then the next week, they outplayed the Brumbies in Canberra, which is something you don't do very often. And then they played both the two of the 3 North Island sides, in Auckland, the Blues, and Waikato, and the win in driving rain in Auckland, and the next week in Waikato was some of the better performances in terms of forward pack that I've seen against New Zealand sides that should be winning those games and winning them by 10 plus at the very least. So they were a joy to watch. I love their orange jersey. I want my hand on one of those if you can, somebody. They've done well. They've made the finals. They did slip towards the end in South Africa, which is a bit of a disappointment there. But for me, they get a B minus. I think that they can be pretty happy with the year.
A B minus. Wow, that's a bit harsh. I'm with Jax here on an A minus. I think that they definitely exceed their expectations. As you say, that 7-game winning streak, 2 in Australia, 2 in New Zealand, and 3 in Argentina. Absolutely, as Christian says, turned their season around. It totally did. That was a fantastic a run of results. The only downside is the fact they couldn't win in South Africa, couldn't win any games in South Africa. And when you're in the Africa Conference, that's 4 losses straight away, which is going to be bad. And then, as you say, they picked up. They had some early season losses at home as well. Now, under Mario Ledesma, a new coach, we saw some great strides here with their discipline improved massively during this season. They weren't picking up anywhere nearly as many yellow cards or as many penalties. And I think, this was definitely a big step forward for Jaguares. Made it into the finals for the first time. So no, I think A minus for me on this one. Christian's got an A plus now. I think they need to get at least one win out of their 5 games in South Africa before you could say that. Before you could give them an A plus in this one. And for them, that's going to be their big challenge next season, is getting that win in South Africa, because at the moment, if they're going to be in the Africa Conference, they're really going to need to win in South Africa to challenge. So that's got to be their big thing for next year. The other big question is the Pumas selection policy, because they keep changing that around, which has caused all sorts of which has caused some confusion as to how they're selecting the Pumas. And with Juan Martin Hernandez retiring and Nicolas Sanchez off to Stade Francais, there is a big hole left there for that number 10 general, and that's my big worry for the next year, is that they've lost the Wizard and his apprentice, both in at the same time, and that's got to be a concern, I say, for the Jaguares going into next season.
I think, and I think with them, they just got to stick with the effort, and the rewards will come. And credit to them. One thing I really did enjoy about their play this year is they played like a 90s Australian side, with the old counter attack and punch through the line. It's a joy. It brings tears to the eye. Always does. That they got to now start to expand on that game, because teams will then notice they play the same game, so they've got to just start to pick up the pace with some of those players. They'll need that. A few of those backs that you'd mentioned and some of those players leaving will be big blows, so they've got to keep finding new players through the Argentinian system. But keep at it, boys. Keep at it, and we'll see where you go in 2019. They finished top 4 in the World Cup 4 years ago, so the Argentinian boys will want to play well for the Juarez at Super Rugby level as well.
Yeah, it's essentially a big loss. I mean, some players we should mention. Tucolet had a great season. Buffelli did as well.
Matera was immense.
Yep, Matera immense. Obviously, Creevy was in there. So yeah, some big suits from them, and also got to say, Lavanini for cleaning up his act and not getting a yellow card every game. Congratulations, sir. It was that was good to see. So finally, the team that is actually in the finals, the Lions, we say 9 wins, 7 losses, the same record as the Jaguares, but 10 bonus points, unlike the 2 from the Jaguares, meant they finished on 46 points, finished second in the just ahead of the Waratahs to get them that important home semi-final last weekend. 84 points positive on the old points difference, with 519 points. That's the third most amount of points scored. So they obviously happy going forwards. 435 defensively, perhaps a little bit of a worry for them that actually haven't been strong defensively, but hey, their pack and some of their exciting backs have been a joy to watch this season.
They have. They've had some very narrow wins and some very narrow losses as well, Paul. Which probably, they're certainly not the Lions of last year that won the minor premiership and came pretty close to winning the whole thing. But they did finish top of the conference, so they're going to get a B from me. They're not quite getting the A's. The A would have come if they had beaten at least 1, maybe 2 New Zealand sides, because I think with their team they're good enough. Probably not for the Crusaders come Saturday night, but they'll be rowing a pretty easy loss against the Blues with that was probably but we'll go into that later. But I think they could have still got at least another win or 2 there. They were lucky to scrape away with the Sunwolves win, but as in an entertainment value, it was there. They certainly had a great second half against the Waratahs on Saturday, but some of their wins came from the mistakes of others we saw as well in their final round game against the Bulls, where their 38 points came on the back of a lot of mistakes the Bulls had made. So, look, they're certainly not the team of last year or the year before. Good luck to them on Saturday night. They're still a good team. And, to make 3 in any competition, to make 3 grand finals in a row, to win your conference 3 times in a row is still a big effort.
Absolutely. And I think that's why I'd probably give, I'll probably give them B+ because we expected them to win this, to win their conference. They did. But as you say, they slipped up against the Blues. That game against the Sunwolves, they only just sneaked through. So they definitely, I think a lot of people are saying, they're not the team they were last season. Barca Pundit, though, makes a very good point. What if they win the final? Will you give them B? Will you guys give them B? Absolutely not. If they win the final, hey, it's A+ all the way through. everything else is forgiven if they win the final. But the problem is, I don't think anyone can see that really happening. So, Unbiased Rugby's got an A minus. I'm going B plus. I think you went for B as well. So, I think it's around the expectations, isn't it? We expect the Lions to be the best side because we've seen that from them. We've seen the quality that they have in that side in players that had like Franco Mossert, which we've mentioned, Karl Marx, not Karl Marx. What am I saying? Malcolm Marx. Oh dear me. In there, and Quagga Smith, but basically that pack as a unit is very strong, and then obviously in the backs, Yanchis when he gets non-share right is very good, and we can talk about a lot of the backs, but Dante in particular has shown in his first with that try at the weekend that they have flashed of brilliance in the backs as well. It's just they've been inconsistent this season, which they haven't been in the previous couple of seasons. That not had that killer edge, that clinical edge that they've had previously, and that lack of consistency is what has disappointed us a bit there. Looking forward to next season, they're going to leaking players to the UK still. Ruan Dreyer off to Gloucester, Franco Mostert going to Gloucester. Jacko Creel admittedly didn't play, gone to Gloucester.
There's a bit of a sign there.
Who happens to be at Gloucester as a coach at the moment? As head, and Van Rensburg off to Sale Sharks, but he has been out of favour this season anyway. So but Mostert is going to definitely be a loss for them next season. His line-out work is fantastic.
Look, I think any loss to Gloucester, for obvious reasons, there is going to be a big loss. So I'm looking to see what the Golden Lions in the Currie Cup and some of the players coming through those systems, can they grow them and develop them quickly to their roster for next year. The ball now, if I could make an observation, is up to the other three South African sides in the Hawaris to meet the expectations of how the Lions go, because the Lions, while they're fading, will probably still be trying to go for 4 in a row in terms of conference wins. So the ball's in the other courts of the other sides in that conference to meet their standards, certainly.
No, as you say, the Lions set the standard in South Africa, and the others have got to live up to it. Absolutely. You say 3 conference wins, 3 finals, 2 lost so far is going to be it's going to be a problem, they're going to have to find someone to go through. So, sir, you said you didn't have as long tonight, but you've been on for an hour and 20 minutes, and we still haven't done the New Zealand conference. Are you still good, or do you need to make a move? I can quite happily finish off the New Zealand conference on my own if it's okay, if you need to
go. I mean, mate, I'm enjoying this.
You're enjoying it? Okay, so we'll keep going then.
I've got another 20 spare anyway. I'll be right, man.
Don't forget, everyone, to hit like, retweet, share, let your friends know, all of that kind of stuff. It really does help. So please do that. And obviously, if you're on the podcast, give us a 5-star review. We'd love to get one of those occasionally as well. So let's move on to the New Zealand conference and start with the bottom of the table. And thank you, Ronan Rugby, for letting me know that the Blues should get a solid F for this one. Unfortunately, we don't go that low. We only go down to D. Actually, we'll get down to D minus. Actually, so let's see if we get a D minus out of this lot. So the Blues played 14, played 16. You could argue actually they only played about 3. To be honest, they turned up for the others. Whether they actually played them or not, is a different ball game entirely. Played 16, won 4. lost 12. On 22 points, came second bottom of the bracket, and quite deservedly so, with a minus 131 points difference. Worse than all the other teams, except the Sunwolves, scored 378 points, which was the least out of any side in the competition, and by an allowed in 509, which was only beaten by the Sunwolves. So, second worst defence, worst attack, and second worst team in the league. So, obviously, you can see I'm upbeat about my side here. How do you think they went?
Look, I'm certainly not going to blame Tanu Umaga. He can only do so much. That squad, when I look at it, has the potential to do anything in that conference. It really does, because it's got a very good attacking flair. It's got some good young players in there. It's got some good forwards. Oh look, mate, it's a squad that's underachieved for the last 3 years.
3? Keep counting. A few more than that.
Probably 4. If you count 2015. Oh, that's right. 2015 was just as disappointing. Their best game, because I did watch quite a few Blues games, was the win against the Sunwolves, where I thought their forward pack really got stuck in and played the line speed of the Sunwolves very well, and that's a very honest observation. They played very well that day. I think it was 24-10 to the Blues. The nadir was the loss against the Juarez. I was really looking forward to them playing well in a lot of those games, and I even said, I believe that one win was all it took to get their confidence back. The last game against the Crusaders, and mate, they got the Crusaders in round 1 next year to excite the Blues fans even more. They tied off, didn't they, in the last 20, and you could see it's going to be a big off season, and some changes need to be made.
Yeah, the changes need to be made. The changes need to be made from the board downwards, and that's not happening. I mean, you've for those of you that listen to this regularly, that myself and Ashwin have ranted about this before. Mr. Graham's comment there, Rico Iwani was good. Everyone else was trash. Is a tad harsh. Akira Iwani had his moments, particularly at the beginning of the season, and you see he's definitely upped his work rate, his mentality. He's still got some way to go. Don't get me wrong, but I think there are some decent players in there. Oh, sorry, you didn't give him a rating.
I'm not going to go as hard as D-. I'm going to go C-.
Wow.
There's potential there. There's just a little bit more work. A lot of work to be done. Can I say I do watch the Mitre 10 Cup for my Kiwi friends? I'm going to be thrilled and intrigued to see how Auckland and North Harbour go. I want them to do the best that they very well can in that competition.
Yeah, so I think actually Auckland need to get relegated like Waikato did last season. So we'll see how that pans out.
I know that's an entire subject altogether, but it certainly helps in the development of the Blues, and good luck to them.
Oh, absolutely. Well, it should help in the development of the Blues. Unfortunately, the Blues and Auckland don't actually talk to each other, and the Blues don't allow Auckland to use their training facilities. So there's, I say, one of the many issues that goes on there. So I know, to me, there have been a number of players who have played well. Akira Iwani has done well, and injury was a big issue for the Blues this season. I'm going to give them a D, but I will be aware that maybe a D plus, because I'm aware that the injuries were a big issue. Losing Augusto Pulu was a problem. Losing the Sonny Bill Williams to injury, George Moala to a season-ending injury. Also having Ledger, I think, got injured. Fiani got injured as well, and we end up just not having any centres to play. I mean, the last two or three games of the season, you had basically Stephen Perifetta with a bunch of wingers outside him and no inside backs at all. The losing Terry Black before the season even started, well, actually before the year even started, didn't help at all. And yeah, the list of injuries. I know that we'll talk when we go through. So other sides will say how injuries didn't affect them, but injuries absolutely massive decimated.
And Jerome Kano's leadership around the breakdown, they're going to have to find some good replacements for him too. Yeah,
with George Moala going, Bryn Gatland happy with that's not an issue. I don't think, as long as the Terry Black's fixed. You've got Terry Black and Stephen Perifetta, and then Jerome Kano are the big players leaving. It's good to see Big Carl, Tony Cafe, who made his name, didn't have a contract at the beginning of the season, and made his name at the Chiefs. It's good to see him get a Super Rugby contract for next year coming up. And then what you were saying about following Auckland is, you look at a lot of the replacements, the players coming in, they're from Auckland. So Hoskins, Sotutu, Harry Plummer, Tanalai Tele, all from Auckland are the replacements for Moala, Gatland, Kano. So it's good to say, we are looking. This is the right way to go about it. Is to grow from within rather than just try and go out and buy players. And so, yeah, I think that's the right way. But there's a lot of things to change. For my mind. So I went for a D plus. But the boardroom is really a problem. Oh dear, some of the comments. Such a shame that their Super 15 days was so long ago, and then Jack Darby goes, "Don't you mean Super 12?" and Ronan goes, "Don't you mean Super 10?" And yeah, there's probably an element of that. It is a long time ago since the Blues' glory days. And
those days, I was back in high school back then. The Crusaders and the Blues game on a Friday night at 5:30 our time, 7:30 your time. You're 2 hours ahead of us, but equally we all sat down and watched the game of the round, and it was that when the Blues were at their peak, and it was fantastic. And they gave no quarter, and the Crusaders gave no quarter, and you'd watch 80 minutes of enthralling rugby. Those are the days that need to come back, and they need to come back fast. Because if we keep talking about work in progress with the Blues or things like that, we'll never see the Blues at their best again. And I don't want that as a fan. I really, really want, if I could be honest, and we've all got to be honest, and you have been, Paul, with your summation, is that we want, as fans, to see the Blues competitive in the New Zealand Conference.
No, absolutely. And Jack Debbie, I wasn't on this planet the last time the Blues were any good. That's a little bit harsh. But anyway, well, actually, that might even be true, thinking about it. Yeah, but no, we can't even say that they're building, because at the moment we're not even seeing that. 4 wins out of 12 is disgraceful for the franchise in the biggest metropolitan area in New Zealand, and they really need to do that. Barca pundit, when I think of Blues glory days, I think of Carlos Spencer. You're not the only one. There's quite a few Blues fans who would actually like Carlos Spencer back. And they, but clearly that's not going on. Anyway, next up, the Highlanders, champions from obviously 3 years ago now. Finished with a winning record of 10 wins and 6 losses, -8 though on their points difference. Only 4 bonus points, which is less than the Blues got to finish on 44 points overall. How do you rate their season?
Well, the men from the hill country in the beautiful Otago, still love that place from my visits in New Zealand. They, in one of those wins, is obviously a win against the Crusaders. So they're one of the 2 sides that have beaten the Crusaders this year. It could have been... I think they were solid. The Highlanders have always been a solid side. I'm going to give them a B-. I think they did pretty well. They were always in the contention for that 3-4 slot in the New Zealand conference. So the potential and what they did in getting to the finals is still a great achievement. Obviously, they'll rue the yellow card and their loss to the Waratahs in Sydney. But they're a side that.
So which lost the Waratahs in Sydney?
The finals lost last week. But
so yeah, because there's an argument here that the Highlanders should be kicked out of New Zealand entirely for ending the winning streak against the Australian sides with that loss in Sydney earlier in the year.
I think that's a really harsh call. I think that there was an incident where ultimately the referee had no option but to give the chap a red card for the boot to the face.
Oh, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that the referee got that wrong at all. No, I think it was perfectly. Yep, no, absolutely a clear red card. Deserved to go. No, this is more of this, like to say, the ending that winning streak. Oh dear, that was. They should have been brought back, put in stocks, and had tomatoes thrown at them for such a thing. But yeah, no, they had a couple of disappointing games in Sydney. Clearly, that one and also the final. As you say, both of them influenced by cards that they didn't that were their own fault. If you're not I think potentially it's a little bit harsh on the guy running back. Sorry, I'm thinking of the wrong weekend now. That was last weekend I'm thinking about. But so yeah, no. If you're going to both times, no complaints on the cards. But Mr. Grant says that streak was getting ridiculous. Good, it finally ended. Well, yes, but so the couple of you say silly things like that, which or disgraceful actually, kicking someone in the face. Sorry, that hurt them this season. Always been a side that needs sort of your Ben Smith, Aaron Smith, Liam Sobwaga, Naholo, they're all Blacks to really stand up.
And they played some good rugby this year, those 4.
Yep, they did. Naholo went a bit off the boil, in the middle of, or just after the European break, just after the international break. But yeah, you say they all did a good job, and the pack also stood up as they always do. So I think B- is they made the finals, which is impressive, and then just came up short in that one. Lima Sopawanga, obviously the big name that's just departing. They've also Guy Miller is also heading off to Biarritz as well, but Lima Sopawanga is one they're going to miss. Bryn Gatland coming in does not have the same level of experience and quality at this stage. He may gain it at this stage, but so that's going to be a big step down for them down there in Dunedin.
Yeah, and I should mention Rob Thompson stepped up and put his mark on that 13 jumper, and I thought he played pretty well too. Gatland, I like what I see of him as a technical 5'8". Certainly, probably not the finesse or the style of, say, a Larkham or a Grant Fox, but he's a workman-like 10, and that sort of workman-like 10 fits the Highlander system quite well, because they work very hard for their points. And again, I'll use the Aussie acronym here. You'll be right. You'll be right.
Yeah, I think
and he's got the Smith boy, the non-related Smith boys at 9 and 15 to lend a hand. So he'll be right.
Yep. No, I think he'll do fine there. Next up, the Chiefs. 1-11, lost 5 with 5 bonus points and a 95 points difference to finish on 49 points. Perhaps the most unlucky team in New Zealand in the fact that they were the only side that lost their All Blacks whilst they were on tour. All the other teams lost them when they actually were in the country, and so they could get them back for the game. So maybe that cost them a home quarter-final and they're against the Hurricanes. But a side you've got to say that did very well considering the number of injuries they received during the season.
I loved watching the Chiefs play this year, and they're they're the second of the 3 sides I'm looking forward to watching next year with great interest. We finally saw some of the hopes and prayers that we wanted to see out of D-Mac wearing a 10 jumper, and he started to really improve his game at 10, I thought. Charlie Nato crashing it up the middle. The Chiefs run at this square of the pitch on square angles, and their running game's very exciting because it breaks up the field and gives D-Mac an opportunity to go inside and outside to his backs, and they scored some great tries too. Second half of games, they should not go to sleep. Bedtime doesn't start until the game's well and truly over, and they've certainly, in many regards, let themselves down on that. But overall, I'm going to give them a B+, because they played some really good rugby in between some of those nights where they shouldn't. They did scrape away with a couple of wins. They should have beaten the Hawaris, I think, when they played at Rotorua. But overall, they're there or thereabouts. So I'm looking forward to seeing, can they expand on that next year? Because they've got a great side with Retallick and D-Mac and the like there, and their depth did very well considering the injuries that they had.
Oh, their depth is fantastic. I mean, they've got 4 players 4 props that came in on short-term loans or short-term deals. I think Carl Twenty-Caffey, who's heading up to the Blues, obviously didn't have a contract at the beginning of the season, and has done very well and got himself a contract. And he is the one that went back to play rugby just purely to try and keep his weight down, wasn't he? And that's basically saved his life and ended up being an All Black or something. So amazing story there that came out of adversity. So yeah, I'm going to give them a B+ because I think because of the number of injuries and also the way that they had to deal with losing those players at the most inopportune moment. I mean, other players, I mean, Tyler Ardron came in and stepped up and was a big player for them as well. And even Ty Falcon stepped up and had and played some good rugby when he had to in there. So yeah, a lot of and Solomon Aliamalo, also another player who had a great season for them. And you got to think when you missed out other player. I mean, Tim Nanai-Williams, who's off to Clermont now, and he got injured early on and would have been one of their key players as well. I mean, so yeah, they did very well for that. They are losing Nanai-Williams, Charlie Nartai, Liam Messam, and Dominic Bird, all off to Europe, off to France actually. So yeah, some holes to fill, but they've shown that they're very capable of filling those holes this season.
And they will next season. That Waikato side they got in the Mitre 10 Cup has some good depth in it, and they're a very handy side. So, Chiefs fans, you'll be right. You looking forward to watching you go around next year.
Yeah, it's going to be. It's. I've enjoyed seeing DMAC playing 10. I know a lot of people still think he should be a 15, but I think 10 was always where he was going to end up. Yeah, it's good to see that. It took about half a season to get up to speed, but I think he's now showing people that actually he is a 10, and another season ahead of the Rugby World Cup next season will be good for him as well. I can't see him switching back to fullback anytime soon. And also, you've got to remember that this was Colin Cooper's first season in charge at Super Rugby level. So again, congratulations to him and what he did with the Chiefs this season. Then the Hurricanes also finished on 11 wins, 5 losses, 51 points, 131 points bonus difference, and got themselves to the semi-final where they lost out to the Crusaders. A team that started well and faded a little bit towards the end.
Well, obviously they had that first round loss to the Bulls to start with as well. So, but no, they did start all right, and they faded off towards the end. I thought, we certainly saw the best of them against, say, the Rebels, where I think they put on about 50, or close to it. And the worst of them was when they played in Canberra, and the Brumbies got the win there. So, they're a wonderful side to watch with their backline, and certainly, they were just a little bit frustrating for me this year. They'll get a B+ from me, but they could have done. They're certainly not the side of 2015, 2016. They've just lost a little fizz somewhere along the line, but they're still a very dependable rugby union side, New Zealand, and top 2 in their conference again. So there's not a lot I can say. There's just some indifference there that I certainly noticed over the year.
Yeah, I'm going to go for a B for them in the end. Actually, rugby gets first half A, second half C, and I think that's probably about it.
But they were the other side to beat the Crusaders this year as well.
Very true. I think it was actually as they came back off tour as well from memory. But a side where that seems to forget how to score when it wasn't first phase set piece towards the end of the season, sort of seemed to run out of ideas. And as Andre says, their pack is their weakness. It's not physical enough, and so when all your tries against the Chiefs and again against the Blues came from first phase set piece, when you were going to come up against the Crusaders, you were always going to struggle if you'd forgotten how to score from phase play. And so to me, that was really their problem. Even with that, you've got to say that the Chris Boyd era that comes to an end now will always go down as a success. I can't remember if he was coaching them when they lost to the Highlanders, but he won them their first ever Super Rugby title. So he's going to go down as a legend of the franchise.
Oh, absolutely. And can I say, I was there on that night up at the Tamworth Hotel watching that final 2 years ago.
See, when you said you were there on the night, I was like, what? You got a ticket for the cake tin? No, you weren't there.
No. It was, and there was a lot of Hurricanes fans there, and I must admit, I also went for the Hurricanes that night. Thanks to this wonderful cap, you can look the part. I bought that in Auckland too, which didn't impress too many Aucklanders. But the Hurricanes fans are the most passionate fans I have met in any rugby competition, in Super Rugby. They love their rugby and they love their rugby side. Their players are passionate about what they do. The Lions are a great club, obviously, in the Mitre 10 Cup. It's a great side to watch. With their fantastic back line. They've got a big pack of forwards. More often than not, they win than they lose. So, it'll go down as a real success for Chris Boyd. Well done, mate. You've certainly done yourself proud.
Absolutely, and Andre says that they'll do. He says they will do well to improve next year with new coaching staff. But Plumtree has had a lot of the accolades for that win. So I think him stepping up isn't going to be that much of a change. I think the real problem is going to be some of the names they're losing. So the Fatialofa off to Worcester Warriors has been pretty much ever present in their engine room. Brad Shields off to Wasps, again the captain. Blade Thompson, another regular when fit. Julian Sevilla, which perhaps not such the loss with if they've got players fit, but definitely going to reduce the depth they've got in the backs, and Higher West as well as the backup. Obviously the backup fly half there. So some holes to fill. James Marshall coming back from London Irish will help fill at number 10, but otherwise, yeah, some real holes there in that pack to fill for next season.
But I've got to mention too, Paul, how good is it to see Nehe Milner Scudder come back from injury after all the setbacks he's had. I remember his test debut against the Wallabies. We actually won that night, but he scored 2 tries and he was fantastic on his debut. And I thought there's the birth of a superstar. Don't give up on him. He's still a superstar. It's taken a champion effort to get back on the park after his injury setbacks. And he hit some good form towards the end of the season. So I'm excited to see him. James Marshall, he's a great player. He's back for them. So yeah, they'll be looking to fill in some holes. But again, it comes back to depth. That Wellington Lions side is very talented, and so their county sides I'm looking forward to seeing play in the Mitre 10 Cup, that's for sure, and seeing where they can fill some players in.
A side that from memory got promoted last season back up to the Premiership, and obviously if Dane Coles can return from his injuries, it'll be like having a brand new player back, and what a player to have back. So yes, potentially things looking good there. And finally, the Crusaders played 16, won 14, scored 542 points, making them the second highest scorers in the league, just behind the Waratahs, against 295, making them the most measly defence in the league, and a positive 247 points difference. 7 try bonus points in there to give them a grand total of 63 points, top of the ladder by a country mile, or 12 points is how far a country mile is for you folks. Fantastic season for the Crusaders.
Well, firstly, being from a rural area, a country mile is definitely a lot longer than that. But, yeah, no, I agree. They were first by a long way. They get an A+ from me. This is the gold standard in the most premium rugby competition provincially in the world. The Crusaders, over the years, they have just made people want to go and hide under the covers because they're that good. Jack Goodhue has come of age. Ryan Crotty's the creative, running inside centre. The Richie Mwanga just destroys teams to bits at 10. And they got 2 good 9s. Kieran Reid's back now. He's looking fit. They got an All Blacks front row, an All Blacks back row, and a Wallaby in Peter Samu. And not forgetting my old mate, Wyatt Crockett off the bench, the 200 gamer, playing like he's played 10 games and he's 21 years old. So,
no. He's showing far more experience than that. But yes, it's just fantastic to watch the Crusaders. They are a wonderful side, and they are my tip for Saturday night, folks. A very strong side. I think going to be on very short odds, clearly for the final. Got to give them. Bas Pundit, if they lose the final, I'll give them an E. You got to say A+ for this, and a bit hats off to Raised Robinson, because Robinson, and there's a guy who has taken a side that was notorious for slow starting, and in both his first 2 seasons they haven't started slow. They've been straight out the blocks, and that hasn't meant that they've got themselves the important home advantage for the playoffs. So congratulations to him. He's clearly seen that as a problem and fixed it. Really interesting, some coaching choices. I mean, bringing down Ronan O'Gara, for example, has worked really well, and he's settled in. Is back for another season next season. So some really interesting things happening behind the scenes. But yeah, it's a side that can lose Moody, Franks, and Cody Taylor, basically an All Blacks front row, and still win a game. You've got to say has got phenomenal depth, and that's what we've seen from them. So hence, yeah, definitely an A+ to have gone to have done this. Looking forward to next season, and the scary thing is how few players are losing. Wyatt Crockett obviously is retiring. Peter Samu is heading back to Australia, but he hasn't been necessarily first choice. He's not in the team anyway. He's a bench player. They got Douglas coming back from Benetton to help provide some depth around Kieran Reid. And Tumanavalu is perhaps the biggest loss for them, who's off to Bordeaux, who has been playing very well for them this season. But then we've seen Masaleli has had a very good apprenticeship this season, and will be in place to step up and get that starting role. So, great season for them, and things all look fine next season as well.
Well, I'm not going to count roosters or chickens or bulls or sheep or anything in my sleep, but I dare say if they win a lot on Saturday night, well, I think they can do the three-peat. I really think this is scary. Lift your games, the other 14 sides, because the Crusaders, they're just an absolute joy to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, barring any long-term injuries, you'd say that they would go into next season as favourites. But you've got to remember, they've got an awful lot of All Blacks in here. The All Blacks will also be looking at resting quite a few players in the Rugby World Cup year. So what kind of, is it just going to be 2 games, or is it going to be more? So those sort of things will impact them next season. But yeah, sure, they're not losing personnel or key personnel, so they should go into next season with plenty of confidence. Obviously, odds-on favourites to win this weekend as well. So yeah, fantastic season for the Crusaders, and yeah, totally deserve their position at top of the log. For what you said was going to be a short one, you're only available shortly. Yes, a couple of players we should call out. Richard Mo'unga obviously had a great season this season. You say that Wyatt Crockett, Goodhue Axis has gone well. Jack Goodhue's really stepped up. Got some concerns around Wyatt Crockett around his head, obviously, and the number of injuries he's had this season. And the other players who kind of really step up has been Scott Barrett, who's really stepped up his game this season as well.
All around the park, Scott Barrett's had a great season, as well as, I do sometimes worry about the injuries that Crotty gets from time to time as well, because they do mount up. But he's still very much the creative inside centre. Goodhue, Mo'unga, best 10 in the competition by a mile. I know that I speak volumes of Wyatt Crockett, and will continue to do so, even as a bench player, and he's not a starter. Well, he did start a couple of games this year. You just think that he hasn't lost it. He's still a very good prop. He'll come on and do his job and win another title, hopefully on Friday night. So the Crusaders and Razor Robertson, they're a team, and they play as a team, don't they, Paul? They're just, you could say a lot of words and write a lot of books, but I'm not going to do that because words just, yeah.
And they've had injuries as well. So as we said, they've been missing an All Blacks front row. They're 2 All Blacks props. Kieran Reid have played very little rugby this season. They'll be very fresh kind of rugby championship. So they've definitely had, this has been a team effort, not one of the superstars. In contrast to say someone like the Waratahs, where it's been a lot about the superstars, and if they don't click that game, whereas with the Crusaders you can see someone else will step up and the systems will work, whoever's in there. You don't see that kind of, and that's kind of the key difference between them and a lot of the other sides, not just the Waratahs, but the Waratahs are such an obvious example with their Hooper, Foley, Beale, Folau combo that they have there. So, yep, congratulations, Shane. Thank you very much for joining me and reviewing all the teams this season. Clearly, we've gone for a good 2 hours, which is, but it has been an absolute joy. So, thank you very much for joining me this evening.
Thanks for having me on, Paul. Yeah, you can catch me at SchoolMate on Twitter at SCOOLM8 and come talk rugby.
Absolutely, I'll just bring that up on the screen. Sorry, we've been talking without them there this evening. And of course, I've been Paul at DrivingMaul, always up for good old rugby chats. Please do drop in, leave comments, all of that kind of stuff. Share, tell your friends, and if you really want to support us big time, then go become a Patreon, which helps with microphones and stuff. So please do that. Patreon, patreon.com/DrivingMaul. When I say big time, hey, you can get in there for as little as $1 a month. It's not big time. But hey, if you want to give us $1 million a month, you can do that too. I'm not going to stop you. Yeah, that would solve an awful lot of my problems at work, or actually would get rid of work and make this my job, and that would be an absolute joy. But hey, now I'm just going into la dreamland. So thank you very much for joining me. Good night, and catch you all tomorrow. I'll be with Ashwin for the All Blacks edition.